Thanks, Aaron, for first of all starting Ten Academy. We all know there's a talent deficit in Africa, particularly in the artificial intelligence uh, sector, and we can see how uh, artificial intelligence is proliferating in our lives today. Almost all our devices, almost all technologies are using it, and if Africa is left behind, we're gonna have a massive gulf in the future. So it's a great thing. What Ten Academy is all about, and thanks for having me here. So my name is Kelechi Oguchi. Um, I've been doing machine learning for what would I say about 3 years, I guess. I started when I was in my last year in school. Uh, I used Prior to this, I used to be an Android developer. I used to write Java. I used to build Android applications, but I got tired of it. I guess I wanted something new, and then I discovered data science. Uh, and then luckily at the time that was the very beginning of the data science Nigeria. The Nigerians are probably familiar with the institution, but they organized boot camps. So that was the very first data science Nigeria boot camp ever. So we had to take some courses. I think on EDX, if I recall correctly. So I did all of that, and unfortunately, I didn't make it into the boot camp. But I didn't let that stop me. I just kept on learning my Python and all the old pandas, NumPy, Matplotlib, and whatnot. Scikit-learn. So uh, I joined. Then when I figured I was good enough, I started doing some freelance. I used to do a lot of freelance on Upwork and Fiverr just to get the hang of real world projects. Then I was lucky enough to get an internship with InstaDeep. InstaDeep is a Pan-African AI company headquartered in London. We are currently in about 7 countries, I think. We're in South Africa, Nigeria, the United Kingdom, France, Dubai. Uh, where else are we in? I'm not. I don't quite remember, but I think we're in about 6 or 7 countries. Then thereafter, I after my internship, I got a full-time role, and I've been there for the last close to 2 years, I guess. Uh, so my day job is basically a research engineer. I work on building AI solutions for clients. The clients range across several industries. I've done work on e-commerce. I've done work on telecommunications. I've done work on banking, and now I'm currently doing work on biotechnology, just dealing with protein sequences. So I think that's my experience in a nutshell. Besides work, I also try to do research. I've done a lot of research around NLP because I'm very passionate about African languages. Uh, I feel like language is probably one of the most, perhaps the most important. It's arguably the most important form of communication on earth today. And given the advent of the internet, text is everywhere. And I mean, according to a research last year, only 1% of the internet, all African languages basically, do not make up to 1% of all the text data on the internet. So there is a massive gulf. There's a massive gulf in text data for African and other Western languages like English and whatnot. So I've been doing some research around this, figuring out how we can use AI to help do some natural language processing work on this language. So I guess that's all about me and my experience so far. I hope I didn't miss anything out. Yeah.
Kelechi, we can move over to questions, but yeah, I don't know. So so maybe a couple of questions for you from me, I guess on behalf of the class. What advice do you have for people who want to get into the job market? And I think most of the people here are as motivated as you were, and the job market is slow and it's taking time and people aren't necessarily responding. What advice would you give?
Okay, so I think the first thing to realize is that, particularly in Africa, there are not a lot of AI jobs, but uh, and as an entry level, it's kind of difficult to get a job, but it's very possible, and you're gonna do it as far as you keep at it. So I think the first thing you need to realize is that it's not gonna be an easy ride to get a job. So you should prepare yourself mentally for that. You're gonna get rejections, but you cannot let those rejections define you because they're just rejecting your application. They're not rejecting you as a person. Your application doesn't represent who you are. It's just something you cooked up together to represent yourself, but it's not actually who you are. You're beyond your applications. So you should know it's not going to be an easy ride. And then I think the thing that stands out for me is you putting yourself in your recruiter's shoes. If you're a recruiter, you ask yourself, what do you want to see in a candidate? And speaking for myself, if I'm interviewing an entry level candidate, I guess what I want to see is a passion and a desire to learn. I think it's more about the attitude for entry level. And how do you show this attitude? I think it's by having a portfolio because no one expects you to have like a ton of job experience for an entry level role, but you have to have projects that you've worked on. So I would say the first thing you should do if you want to start a jump hunt is to work on a lot of projects. You need to um, build your portfolio in certain areas where you can say you want to do a project on data cleaning. You can say you want to do a project on exploratory data analysis. You can say you want to do a project on machine learning, classification regression, dealing with imbalanced data and classification, visualization. These are the areas where we mostly need data science expertise in industry. So you can focus on building a portfolio around these areas, and um, it goes beyond just doing Kaggle competitions. Of course, um, Kaggle competitions and more generic projects are a good way to start. But the truth is, anybody can do a Kaggle competition. Anybody can build a Titanic uh, classification model. But I think it's about taking the extra step. Really, you want to. I don't know how. I don't know how good if your Python is, but I mean, you can look at gathering your own data, probably scraping a web page or doing some things. For instance, there are protests in Nigeria right now about police brutality. One such project can be interacting with the Twitter API to get tweets and classifying them according to sentiments, or just doing some data analysis on that. Those are the real world projects that would show the recruiter that, okay, this person really cares so much about the craft and is taking the extra steps. So I think it's beyond doing um, generic projects, but actually doing projects that are personal to you and that you take the extra step. So there are it's a very competitive world, but if you
Kelechi? Hello. Okay, I think he left the meeting. Hi, sorry, you dropped. You were saying it's a very competitive
Hello?
world?
Oh yeah, sorry, my internet acted up. But yeah, it's a very competitive world, and uh, there are a lot of people out there doing the Titanic classification, building Titanic classification models. So basically, the number one thing you have to do is to set yourself apart by having a clear resume, a very good resume that highlights your strengths and all that. Then you need to interviewing is a skill to a reasonable level. To be to be fair, not all interviews are crafted very well, particularly in the tech space. They might tell you to do a bunch of data structures and algorithm that you may never use in the job, but you have to. Interviewing is a skill, really, and you have to practice it. So I would say practice mock interviews, practice the whole behavioral question. Tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work for us? All this stuff. Just practice interviewing. Then be prepared, I think, mentally, because you're going to get rejected a lot of times and it doesn't define you, but you have to just pick yourself up and keep applying till you get the job. And I think getting your first job is usually the most critical part because once you've gotten the first job, it's almost always easy to move on from there. So just hang in there, really. Hang in there. It's not easy. I know. Particularly being an African boy, you just have to keep going. So yeah.
So we have a couple of questions from the audience, actually, all from Patrick. Patrick,
Okay.
do you want to just unmute and ask? Patrick, you want to unmute and ask?
Okay. So I see Patrick's questions. I don't know if I can
Yeah, please
answer
go ahead.
them or if he's gonna ask. Okay. So I'll just answer. It says there's a noise varies. So the first question: what does it take to get an entry level role with Installip? So um, I would say right now it's easier to come into an internship. Uh, we just completed some rounds of internship, or we are just going to complete some rounds of internship this month, and hopefully puts out a call for others sometime next year, I guess. So uh, and I'm speaking specifically for the Instadip Nigeria team. So, but for direct full time hires, it's a lot more difficult. I would say you need to probably be well grounded with software engineering, at least a year experience with software. You want to have some experience with research because a lot of what we do is about solving non-conventional problems. So oftentimes you need to read a lot of papers and try to apply them to a practical scenario. Um, yeah, but I think at an entry level, if this is your first exposure to data science, then I think looking out for an internship call is the best route into InstaDeep. Um, how feasible? Next question: how feasible technically is it to build an NLP model that seeks to explain a person based on their digital footprints? I'm not sure what you mean by explain a person, but I would assume it means um, giving you a persona of the person or something. I think another thing you need to consider, particularly in this current age, is about ethics. So in any machine learning model you're building, you have to consider the ethical implications. I'm not sure about the ethical implications of this digital footprint personal explanation, but if you think more about it, there might be some loopholes and ways in which it can be used by bad people in quotes. But to answer your question, I think it's almost anything is feasible in machine learning, really. All you just need is data. So to answer this, it's very much possible. If you have uh, an explanation of people who currently use social media, as well as the accounts or their digital footprint, if you have 1,000 of them, 1,000 of them is actually quite small. If you have about 20,000 to 50,000 of them, you should be able to build an NLP model that can do that. Uh, what you really need in machine learning is really data. Data. Um, how I would approach the task. It's I think the most important thing in machine learning, or about half half of the time, the thing that gets you halfway there is really getting the data, particularly for NLP, because getting data for NLP is not so easy, particularly data that does what you want. So, for instance, if you want to build a translation model for an African language, the number one problem you're going to face is getting the data. So, once you get the data, I think building the model is going to be easy. You just have to figure out how to represent your input and your output. For your output, I guess it's gonna be probably a paragraph of explanation of the persona. So you'd figure out you need a sequential output model. But for the input, you say digital footprint. So I'm not sure what digital footprint is, but once you get your data and you figure out how to represent your input and your output, then it's easy to build a model. Um, the next question: how do you manage to keep improving yourself in ML? When one I would not How do you manage to keep improving yourself in machine learning when one has not been involved in a data science role at the company? Okay, so that's a good question. I think uh, the first thing is to realize is that you cannot be on top of every trend. Like I'm not sure how many of us know Archive, ARXIV, but it's an open source platform for publishing papers, and a lot of time machine learning papers are published on there. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that there are hundreds of papers being released in machine learning every single day. So it's nearly impossible to keep track of what is going on in machine learning. So one of the best ways to do this is to follow blogs and newsletters and people that summarize all these things. If you use Twitter a lot, there are a lot of machine learning people on Twitter you can follow that always talk about things that excite them. So that way you're able to filter out, at least get the first level of filter from the noise from the noise being published every day in machine learning, because not everything is relevant to you yet. So you need a filter. So following newsletters, blogs, and experts in quotes that regularly summarize happenings in data science uh, is a good way to go. Let me see if I can. One sec. So, for instance, this is a cargo link that has the top 10 newsletters for data scientists in 2020. So, if you can subscribe to the newsletters here, you're sure that every week you get a new Hello?
We have you back now. We had lost you.
Yeah, sorry. Did you see the link I shared?
Yeah, we have that.
Okay, yeah. So basically, this is a list of top 10 data science newsletters per the author that you should follow in 2020. So this is a good first level filter for a lot of stuff that gets published out in data science every week. So you also probably want to look at specializing later on in the future because it's difficult to try to be a generalist eventually. As an entry level, it's kind of advisable to try your hands at different things so you can be able to add to not streamline yourself out of job opportunities. But once you get a job and you've been doing machine learning for a while, you can start looking at where you want to specialize. So you just channel your energy into that and block out the rest. But it's hard. It's hard to constantly stay abreast of what's going on and to keep improving yourself. I would say then again, it's really about. I think projects are the fastest way to learn. So it's about doing more projects, challenging yourself, participating in competitions. Competitions are also another good way to learn how to build models, especially and analyze data. So you want to participate in competitions, you want to read books, follow blogs, you want to build projects that are personal to you. Uh, I'm I'm a big fan of a practical approach to learning. So 10 Academy has done the hard work in giving you 3 months of well-grounded knowledge in data science. I think all that's left for you is to to go out there and build stuff. Just keep building stuff.
That's a perfect
Um,
segue to my next question about masters versus work experience.
okay. Uh, okay. So just before I answer that, I'll just answer Patrick's question. Last question. It says software engineering for data science role.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So the thing is, you okay. So first of all, it depends on your it depends on the company, right? And there are different roles in data science. Yeah, I said I'm a research engineer. So a research engineer is someone who can do some research, but also can do some engineering. So basically, you can take your built machine learning model and deploy it. There are research scientists or whose core jobs are just to do theoretical research or build models. They are really not involved in the deployment. So then again, the field of machine learning is still nascent, and there are a lot of overlapping job descriptions. But software engineering is critical for good data scientists in the long run, I would say, because uh, there's it's one thing to build models or to even serve them using Flask or something, but if you're working for the Netflixes of this world or the Spotify's or the Googles, how do you want to deploy a large scale model to millions of people daily? So that requires a lot of software engineering expertise. But at this level, I would say you should not bother yourself so much. Just know the basic software engineering and keep improving yourself, but don't be unnecessarily fixated on it because uh, there's a lot of data science to learn as well. And I think it's easier to catch up on software engineering when you have a real job than it probably is to catch up on data science. So, but don't take software engineering as a joke. It's a critical thing for uh, a good career. So to answer Aaron's question, work experience or masters? Well, I think it depends on the goal of the individual. So um, the first thing to know is that in the data science field, graduate degrees are kind of exalted. I mean, typically as a software engineer, no one really cares about your degree, but the story is different as a machine learning person. So if you can get a graduate degree, then you should get it. However, job experiences are nice as well. They're nice to have. And if if I were advising someone in your shoes, I would probably advise them to go for the work experience. Uh, someone who just finished the attend academy boot camp, I would say they should go for the job, the work experience because it's. I mean, you just finished learning stuff. You now want to move on to go and learn more stuff. No, I think you should just get your hands dirty uh, for a while, and then the masters is not running away. Yeah, and you can always go for a graduate degree. But getting that first job is difficult, and once you get it, it just eases everything else. So I think a work experience is good because it's also going to help you in your masters as well. So, and most times, to be honest, there's not so much a master's teaches you if it's not a research-based master's, if it's a course-based master's. I won't say there's anything a master's can teach you that you can't learn on your own. So you're probably just going there for the certificate, which is valid in the field of machine learning because they kind of respect graduate degrees for some reason. So I would say right now you should go for a work experience if you're a 10 academy person. Um, Next question says, do you think advancements in AI, particularly in Africa, still stall due to lack of data? And should we turn our heads towards data collection instead? Uh, to answer the first question, yes. Advancements in AI stall because of data. I mean, a lot of model bias these days. Of course, there are algorithmic biases which stem from the way the assumptions you make in your model and whatnot. But a lot of machine learning model bias comes from data. I mean, if you were to train a facial recognition system on uh, 1,000 images of white people and just one image of a black person, there's obviously going to be some bias in the model. So we need more data, particularly for images, for text, text alone. I mean, there's a reason why Google Translate for African languages are not so accurate. It's because they don't have so much data to train on it. So data is I mean, for machine learning, they always say there are three main pillars of machine learning or AI advancement. It's data, algorithmic, algorithms, and hardware. The hardware parts, I mean, leave that for NVIDIA and Intel and Google TPUs. The algorithm part, I mean, we can be a part of it, but if you don't do it, someone else will do it. Google is going to do it. Facebook is going to do it. They have the budget. They have the resources. But the data part, it's very critical because more often than not, these organizations do not care enough to come and do the data collection. So um, data collection is a very critical thing to do. And in many NLP papers, data collection alone is good enough as a published paper, just to show you how important uh, NLP researchers hold the data. So I wouldn't when you say turn your head towards data collection, I won't say that's the sole thing you should do, but it's a noteworthy and worthwhile thing to do. Particularly if you now go on to do some work on the data. So yeah, data collection is something you should totally do if you have the time and the resources because it's a very hectic process, but in the long run, it's worth it because a lot of people are going to build on what you've done. Uh, yeah. So Patrick says he lost his connection on the approach. So the approach I said was really the first step is getting the data. Really, yeah. Once you have data for digital footprint, for your input and output, for your digital footprint and your output. I don't know how you first need to decide how you want what type of data you want to collect. For output, if it's going to be a summary of a persona or something. For input, um, I don't know what's going to be really. There are different ways that can happen. So once you figure that out, then you can now figure out the best model for your uh, the best algorithm or model to build. If the input is a text and the output is a text, then you can probably look at sequence to sequence models. If the input is are just a variation of different types of inputs, some floats here and there, some integers, some labels and whatnot, you can look at another type of model. So it depends on how you want to represent your data. Digital footprint is very vague. It can be anything really. So once you um, figure out that out, then you can build the model you want. Uh, where would you recommend going for a master's from Aaron? Well, I would say after you have some work experience. I'm Be mindful that I'm speaking from a 10 academic graduate point of view. If I were in your shoes, I would get a work experience like right now, right away, and then.
I just reposted the questions, Kelechi, so I think you might have seen them from before.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch the second. When would you recommend?
Okay.
Yeah. So I think after you get some work experience, you can just go for a graduate degree. I've answered the data question. Patrick says digital footprints are data about an individual's point of view. Yeah, they're data, but what type of data? They can be text, they can be images, they can be labels, they can be anything. So you need to figure out what they are. When you say basics, what are the basics we can focus on in software engineering? Okay, so I would presume 10 Academy taught you guys Python and not R, or both of them, or?
Python.
Okay, Python. So um, did you guys do object-oriented programming?
So we didn't focus a lot on programming.
Okay.
We had 10 projects over the 12 weeks.
Okay. So I would say for Python, speaking from a Python point of view, I think you should be comfortable with variables, loops, all the types of loops, functions. You should definitely be comfortable with functions. You should be comfortable with object-oriented programming, because if you're building not necessarily production level models, but if you're building pipelines, you're gonna need object-oriented programming. So I would say functions, loops, variables, conditionals, object-oriented programming. I think that's all for Python. If you know those, then I think you're good enough for software engineer for an entry-level data science role. Then you may want to know some nitty-gritty details of Python, like generators, the difference between generators and iterators. You want to know. You want to know generators because of if you're handling large data sets, you don't want to hold everything in memory. You want to know what else. I think that's all actually. You want to know your data structures, definitely. You want to know dictionaries, you want to know lists, you want to know tuples, you want to know why tuples are not mutable and when you can use them. You want to know just basic data structures in Python. Uh, yeah, I think that's all. Nothing too fancy. I think there's a Udacity intro to Python. Let me see if I can find it. Mm. Mm. Okay, so I didn't find the one with object oriented, but this one should help. It's free, by the way. It should help with everything except object oriented programming. Then I think there's W3 schools. It's super helpful. Then also Stack Overflow. I mean, if you have any problems, just Google it. They're gonna you're gonna see responses. But I think that's all from software engineering, from a basic software engineering uh, point of view. I guess with the focus on Python. I mean, there's a lot more software engineering knowledge to know, but from an entry level point of view, I think this will make you a solid candidate. So, Ilekura, sorry if I didn't pronounce that well, Idowu says, you and Oreva built a Pigeon unsupervised neural network. Do you plan to extend it to pre-trained models? Uh, so actually, there's been some work to extend it to pre-trained models using a recent T5 text-to-text transformer released by Google, but that didn't give good results. I guess it's because of the size of data. So, um, but right now, I do not think there's any work to extend it to pre-trained models at this moment because we are working on other stuff right now. So, uh, yeah, we're working on other stuff right now. Besides beyond the pigeon thing, I guess. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Kelechi. What sort of technology stack or what sort of tools do you use as part of your normal work at Institute?
Okay. So we are we have a lot of affiliation with Google, so we use TensorFlow a lot, uh, a whole lot. Uh, of course, some teams within the company use PyTorch, but for our default is TensorFlow. Except TensorFlow can do the work, that's when we use PyTorch. So I would say we use TensorFlow. Uh, speaking for myself on the project I'm currently working on, or I've been working on since the beginning of the year, I use TensorFlow a lot. I use Python, a lot of Python because we build pipelines and whatnot. Uh, we use Pandas, but we've actually stopped using Pandas because of the size of data we have. We currently use VAEX. It's for handling big data. I'll just send a link. It's quite similar to Python, a bit to Pandas, sorry. But it works well for big data because it loads them. It doesn't load them in memory. So we use this. What else do we use? NumPy. The only thing we use scikit-learn for is data splitting. But yeah, I think that's all the tools I would say I mostly use. Then what else? What else? In the past, we've used other tools like NLTK, SQL, and whatnot. So, but right now, uh, at least over the last couple of months, I mostly use Python, TensorFlow, and NumPy, VAEX. So, yeah. But as an entry level, I would say you should know your Python, your Pandas, your NumPy, Matplotlib, scikit-learn, SQL. I think that's all really. I think those are all the basic things you should know. Pandas. I don't know if I mentioned Pandas. Yeah.
Ask a question while we're waiting for a question. I keep asking. Me and Patrick keep asking questions at Elakura. So you've been working at Institute for a while, and I suppose you're doing AI that's competitive. You're not doing it just for the African context, but you're doing it globally. Could you say a couple of words on the competitiveness of African data scientists versus data scientists from the rest of the world?
Okay, so I think the first thing to acknowledge is that we have it harder here in Africa. I mean, that's a fact that we all know. So I mean, and uh, but I think that helps us in some regard, in that we have surmounted a lot of challenges as Africans. I mean, we battle with non-constant electricity, we battle with subpar education and whatnot, internet fluctuating. So we are resilient, naturally resilient, and it shows we can hold our own on the global scale. And I've seen that at work. I mean, speaking about Africans, we have okay, yeah, we have three African offices right now. We have one in South Africa, one in Tunisia, and one in Nigeria. So the talent there is massive. It's um, it's massive, really. Like they had they add a lot of value to the company on a global scale. You won't even know anybody there was not I don't know. You won't know anyone there just schooled in Nigeria or schooled in Tunisia or schooled uh, anywhere else. You think they have some form of global exposure, but I think that just goes to show that whatever you put your mind to, you can do it really. You just have to keep at it every day. Of course, there are some days it's gonna be hard, but Africans we hold our own on the global point of view. Now, this does not erase the fact that there's still a talent gap in Africa. Of course, there are talented Africans doing stuff, but there's still a talent gap in Africa, and that's why institutions like 10 Academy exist to bring that entry level, to bring more people into data science, particularly from the entry level point of view. So yeah. Uh, Ada asks, how is it like at InstaDeep community wise? InstaDeep is nice. Community wise, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by community wise, but I know that InstaDeep supports a lot of communities. We are actively involved in communities. We support AI Saturdays. We support Google developers groups in Tunisia, in Nigeria. I mean, we we are sponsors of. We've been sponsors of the GDG for about 2 years in a row, and I think we're gonna sponsor again this year. And we have uh, colleagues who regularly give talks at these events. So I know Studyp is we care a lot about community, particularly about grooming talents from an entry level point of view, because we know these talents are not available in Africa. So that's why we regularly run internships to help them um, come to par. Um, Ido asks, do you think a knowledge of cloud can substitute for software in terms of deploying models? Uh, I'm not sure what you mean by knowledge of cloud, but if you're talking about DevOps, then I would say they almost go hand in hand. I think the only thing different about DevOps is that you have to know a lot of Linux. Um, so software engineering really there's no substitute for software engineering, because even to deploy models, you have to use software engineering. So the two are kind of intertwined. You just have to love your computer and understand the way computers work. So for those, one sec, for those, uh, so I do not have a CS background, a computer science background, so it's difficult. Not difficult per se, but there are a lot of things you're not familiar with. So for those without computer science backgrounds, that's a very, 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 very good course uh, for intro level to uh, for an introduction to computer science. It's from Harvard, and you don't have to have programming experience. You don't need to have programming experience to take that course. But the class really just helps you fall in love with your computer and help you love software and help you love understand what's going on really underneath the hood. It's highly recommended, especially if you do not have a computer science background. Um, yeah, tell us about your works on NLP. Really, I think my main works on NLP have been focused on African languages. I think there was a mention of the unsupervised machine translation model that we built for Pidgin. That was actually my first work in African NLP. Since then, we've gone on to build supervised models. We've been a part of Masakani. And anyone interested in NLP can join Masakani actually. It's a distributed uh, group of African NLP researchers who just come together to solve African NLP problems. We had a paper published a couple of weeks ago at the Findings of EML NLP 2020. We had about 50 authors on the paper, so you really don't have to have so much expertise to contribute to Masakane. Trust me. It can. We currently have some projects on data collection and annotation, so there are a lot of ways to contribute to African NLP. So this, I would say, this is uh, what I'm currently, or where I'm currently doing my NLP works at, which is Masakani. Yeah, but I think my major works have just been on Pidgin, building machine translation models, and Masakani annotating data and evaluating models. Yeah, so yeah.
Super. Thanks so much, Kelechi. I don't think there are any further questions. Um, yeah, well, thank you so much for the feedback in the background. I don't know if you have any questions for the people who are here.
I guess I want to know what are the major challenges they are facing or they faced coming up to speed with data science, and they are facing getting a job, or basically challenges. I like to hear about the challenges people are facing and how uh, they can be, and probably help with how they can be solved. So what challenges are you facing or did you face getting into data science? Are you currently facing right now? And are you facing trying to get jobs?
Why don't we just type so everyone can respond in parallel?
So does this mean like they do not want to take a risk on them, or
It seems like people are worried about the general environment with Corona, that some people aren't sure where their industry is going, and they're just companies that told us before they were hungry for new data science talent. Right now, they're just slow. They're not responding. Some people are saying it depends on their overall system. In Kenya, for example, there's quite a few companies who should be hiring, but they're waiting to see what happens. What are the government regulations on how business can proceed? What does the lockdown look like? It seems like the world seems to be slowing down for now and just seeing what's going to happen over the winter. That's one sense that we have.
okay?
I don't know if
I
you're
see.
seeing the same thing, but it just seems slow, and it seems slow.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a crazy year for everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not easy. But yeah, like you said, I guess we have to see what happens next year after uh, early next year, I guess. But yeah.
I would say just, well, I don't know if anyone's typing or not, but I would say that there also seems to be, when we speak to companies in, especially Nigerian companies, it seems like many companies would rather have people just work for free or to do the internships. And there's so much supply of talent and maybe an oversupply. And I don't know how qualified a lot of people are, but there isn't, it seems like at the very entry level, I don't know if people how to have yourself stand out as opposed to just have 5 people start for free and then see who survives till the end of the internship and hire that person. I could be wrong, but that
Oh.
seems to be one way that in Nigeria sometimes the hiring seems to happen. Is that your experience as well?
Uh, well, I think right now there's a large supply of entry level talents in Nigeria. I'm not sure how polished these talents are, but I would say not so polished. So that's why I largely emphasized on standing out. You definitely want to stand out because it's competitive, but it's not so competitive because not many people take the pain to stand out. So if you stand out, then you're definitely gonna get something sooner than later. So you just have to stand out by building a portfolio, by doing things nobody else is gonna do, doing the hard things. Because if it's easy, everyone's gonna be doing it. So, and regarding companies in Nigeria, I would say many of them haven't seen the need for data science, like actively, heavily and actively investing in data science. I mean, it's been difficult getting clients in Nigeria. I mean, speaking from an study point of view. So it's not too many people understand the value that data holds for them. And yeah, they would in my experience, what I find is that they would rather have from people internally pivot to be data scientists or data analysts or whatever than hire new talent because they don't have to pay those people so much or yeah. But it's a general problem in Nigeria, I would say, and I understand uh, where you're coming from.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, it's an exceptional year, as you said, 2020. Everyone's waiting. We're all waiting for this year to be over. Let's hope that the election in the US goes well.
Yeah, hopefully.
It'll be the next one, but I think we're over time, so I'm just going to wrap up by saying thank you, Kelechi, for giving us your time and providing a lot of input. It's nice to see from my side. So my partner, Yababel, is definitely the more technical among us, and he was the one who really made sure that we covered off a lot of the points that you discussed. And I think that among the 8 trainees that we have here, they exemplify most of the characteristics or all of the characteristics that you've said are important. And so I guess now it's just continuing to put in the work. Yeah, so I think we'll continue. But thank you for your time. And Kelechi, I'll reach out at some point. We have some plans for how we want to put some of our people to work, probably in a consulting model as well. So that's what's next for us. After this training, we want to make sure we can figure out how to get enough people into work before we start doing the next batch of trainees. But yeah.
All right. It's been nice chatting. And thanks to everyone for listening. Just keep at it really. And yeah, I mean you can just reach out anytime. I'll try my best to be of help anywhere I can be.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
All right. Goodbye everyone.